Greetings from London. This is Mariam Sharif, and welcome to Star Moguls podcast. This week, I have a very special guest. I met her at a dinner. She was talking there, and I was so inspired by her confidence and just her humor. She has a great sense of humor also. She is the first female and the first Scottish Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain. Now, what a fantastic achievement. I'm honored to welcome my next guest, Zara Mohammed. Welcome, Zara. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalam, Mariam. Thank you so much for having me and for such a warm welcome.
As a young Muslim female in this predominantly male organization, how did you do it? How did you get here?
Bismillah. I think people always say, well, two things. How did you do it and why did you do it? Because the why is also quite important. I mean, I've always had a passion for community work and for making a difference. And I think that's really important in terms of my faith as well, being of service. And you could say I'm a bit of a nosy, busybody type, I'm an agony aunt. People come to me with their problems to solve. And I think I always felt that, I wanted to be more involved in helping. But when you're a young woman, that is kind of difficult as sometimes to find that space to help in, particularly within the community. And so when I joined kind of university and I actually put my headscarf on in second year of uni, I found the Islamic Society and I found this whole space of people who were doing the kinds of things that I wanted to do, charitable initiatives, campaigns, it was welcoming. And I just kind of was like, yeah, this is a really good space for me to help out. And from there, and much to my parents' dismay, I ended up getting involved in volunteering. And it's not all just activism in a political sense, but it's that kind of community giving. And then, I joined another student organization, which I became. So I never asked for leadership positions, neither did I think I was a leader or any good at them, but they kept coming. So like, to give you a simple example, at university, I just wanted to help out and then I become the events lead. And when you are events, forget it. The events lead is the head, really.
Yeah.
Events and marketing,
Quite stressful as well.
Oh, so I was doing all these events and then they're like, what about vice president? So you end up just getting all this responsibility.
Yes.
I think I enjoyed it in some ways and it pushed me and it was exciting. And then anyway, so I graduated from that level and then I found this national student umbrella body called FOSIS, Federation of Student Islamic Societies, where I was the chair of Scotland, the vice president national, and then the first female president in their 55-year history at that time.
Wow.
In 2016. And then we are a member of the Muslim Council of Britain, who naturally their leadership saw me and thought, oh, why don't you come on over here? And I thought, oh, it's very male dominated. The thing with student scene is it's very vibrant and diverse.
Yes.
So no matter what's going on, there's just a lot. It's always changing and it's probably the more open-minded in some ways because people are so different. They come from all over the world. Whereas joining the community space for me was kind of like, there's not many women there. Everyone's a lot older. Is it really going to change anything? I had all those kind of doubts. So I really tried to stay away, but they persisted.
Right. Okay.
I got the board in 2018 for the Muslim Council of Britain as an assistant secretary general. And again, I'm just like, it's a place to do good. It's a vehicle to do good. And then COVID happens, and then we're like this national umbrella body that's coordinating and helping, and then elections come at the end of 2020, and people are like, well, what do you think? I'm like, what do you mean, what do I think? Who's going to vote for me? You're crazy. And I literally thought people were completely off their trolley to even consider. I never considered myself anywhere near qualified, never mind even able to receive. So anyway, I ran for the election and I was democratically elected by a majority of the membership who happened to be male and, from conservative, our community backgrounds. And January 31st, 2021, my life completely had changed. And the second part to it quickly is, well, why? At the age of 29, why did I want to do that? And for me, it was, this whole idea, well, isn't it about time? And a lot of us complain, we all complain about what we want to see and the change we want to see, but who's going to step forward and take that on? And I knew my name in the list meant political, it had consequences for me in my life moving forward.
Yes.
Something that I felt passionate about, 50% of Muslims in this country under the age of 25 50% happen to be women. So wasn't it time for diverse, vibrant leadership that reflected who we are and who we're becoming? And
Yes.
if Allah opens the door for good, why wouldn't you take it? So I think that why was probably so important more than the how, because the how was never up to me anyway. But in doing it, I think, it created quite a seismic change to my own life and even my own way of thinking. But I'm sure we'll get into that.
I think Allah chooses people and places them in those positions. In this organization, what is your role? What would you say is your role or in the organization right now?
Yeah, so I mean, in a nutshell, I am the leader. I'm the boss. I make the final
Great.
decisions.
I love it.
But I also would say I'm a bit of a rebel.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a change maker. I do like to do things differently, and I think I'm a disruptor. Definitely a big disruptor. Not
Yeah.
that I even thought I was, but generationally, I'm so much younger than previous leadership. I come from a different political backdrop. I grew up in that politics as opposed to was leading in it. So I think I bring lots of differences, being a young woman, being from Glasgow, my own legal education, all these different things, Pakistani heritage, third generations. But ultimately, I am the boss. I set the strategic vision. I got to bring the team together. I am the public face, the media spokesperson, the firefighter, still the agony Ann. And I think in those early days, I struggled to be so many things, especially to be the boss was difficult, especially as I had this I'm a bit of a people pleaser. I'll admit it. I like people. I hope people like
Yeah.
me too. But when you're the boss, you learn that that's just an impossible thing, really, at the best of
Yes.
times.
I was shocked to learn at the talk when you spoke that you're actually a volunteer position.
That's correct. So this is a
And
role.
that kind of just totally, I had to pause and then digest that again. I was like, volunteer. So this is out of your own time. And you're actually a human rights lawyer.
What I kind of was, that's my background. I don't practice in that as I have no time. But
Yes.
I
I was
was,
going to say, where do you make time for that? I mean,
sorry,
does that
my
take in
whole
a back seat or is that completely,
joke
redundant now?
when I started, I thought I'm just going to take like a 2 month sabbatical. I mean, I was kind of starting up my own business and consultancy. So I was in it because it was COVID. So I was
Yes.
like, I want to do something differently and be my own women boss type thing. And then COVID, I thought, I've just been elected. It's a bit overwhelming. Let me just take 2 months, get myself organized. Those 2 months never ended. And it flipped. My full time became this.
Right.
My work was just a side hustle.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the future, I think life is too different to go back. But I
Yeah.
think that's a really important part of my advocacy work. So I see myself using that in, challenging inequality and discrimination and being a spokesperson. So I think that's still part of
What
it.
elements have you taken, from law and applied it to, your role at the Muslim, council?
I don't think we should preach to anybody. So I should caveat, look, there's no such thing as the ideal degree or the best degree, or we're all good at different things. And for me, I was always a bit more booksy. I did like a giant book, and law intellectually challenged me. So, but it's the whole Pakistani thing, lawyers and doctors so I would say please diversify. I'm just giving you this tended to work very well for me because communication skills, that kind of intellectual problem solving, which was really critical for me, but also understanding the intersection between law and politics and religion. So Muslims, for example, are always in the news. And you'll know that, for example, that citizenship bill that came out, nationality and borders bill, and your dual citizenship can be revoked. So obviously, now that I've got a bit of a human rights background and I understand where this kind of legislation is coming from, I've got a bit of a political background as well, but also I'm not a dual citizen, but Pakistani origin. So I'm thinking, oh my God, that is really going to have consequences. So that just sharpens you and you really can get a grasp of things in a much better way. Or if I'm doing an interview, I already had an understanding. I mean, I went to an event it was the Council of Europe. They invited me and it was about, anti-Muslim hatred. And I remember there was a diplomat or one of these kind of whatever they're called in that space, and she was giving me a bit of an education lesson on international law. And I just held my tongue a little bit.
Did she know that you had a background in
I
law?
didn't know because she
Okay.
assumed I was just a community leader,
Oh, I see.
which was fine and it's hilarious. But it was really nice for me to have that. It's a bit of a kind of it worked in that space for me to know Because
Yeah.
you can see, well, what's someone going to say to me? And actually, I do have a better understanding. And remember someone else, for example, a judicial review. So I think it works in this public facing role in which Muslims are so involved in these different things happening in society that I have it, but it's not the essential requirement to becoming a secretary general, whatever. And many of my colleagues have so many other experiences. So it all ties in, but I think it's being sharp and
Yes.
having that kind of knack for being able to argue is
Yeah,
very
yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important knowing how to speak and what to say and when to say it. And which brings me to the fact that you are an amazing public speaker. And when I heard you speak, and where I said the humor is, but that you were, articulate, but also had your own personality in your talks, which is so important because not to completely erase who you are, so you keep the fun element. Have you counted how many public engagements you've attended or spoken at?
like 400, like as an engagement. So I've not spoken at all of them.
Right.
Half.
Okay, so that's still a huge amount. So if we take 200 speaking engagements.
That's a mix of, I mean, like for example, when a breaking news story happens, I could be doing about 19 interviews just for that. When I'm doing, visits around the country, I'll normally give a little bit of a speech as well. So it's not just all like TV and things like that. There's like a whole mixture of things that could be.
What has been the one of the most interesting talks that you've given,
You
and
know,
which has been your most challenging?
yeah, so what I would say was most recently was doing the Cambridge Union debate. That was really, really tough. So look, I've done my fair share of, political interviews, TV interviews, and I think everybody will know those are difficult. But the
Yeah.
Cambridge Union debate was really difficult because I was on the back of a super stressful week of engagements and travel. I wasn't really that prepared for it. It was in my head, but it was so daunting that I done a bit of prep and, but it just dawned on me. Sometimes I agree to stuff and then it doesn't really click to me what I've agreed to. And that was one of them. I was like, okay, I Googled it and I thought, okay, everybody's in a tux. It's recorded. It looks pretty serious. What am I doing? And everyone else, some people were freaking me out, like, Zara, are you sure about this? And the reason that it was harder than anything else that I had done because of the topic, which wasn't your typical Islamophobia and all that stuff, it was the debate. And the proposition was this house believes in a loving God. So this time I wasn't doing what I normally do, which I can do, I guess, with my eyes closed, talk about Muslims, talk about all that. I'm talking about whether this is a loving God.
Right.
Now, for some reason, put myself in a position where I'm going to talk about God's attributes. I'm not a
Right.
theologian, I'm not a scholar, I'm not an academic. I'm just trying to be the best Muslim that I can
And
be.
do people presume that you have this,
Well,
this
no, they
unlimited
knew.
knowledge about Islam because you
Well,
wear a hijab, you are
they
a Muslim
knew.
representative?
They didn't, they chose me because they didn't want a theologian. They actually wanted to talk someone who does represent in a different way. So I caveated that actually I'm not supposed to speak like a scholar. But at the same time, it's a pretty important topic. And so what it is you have two teams, and there
Right.
was kind of like more atheist, secular, kind of not Muslim, the more anti-religion, you could say, or I don't know, anti-religion, but they were, not religious, not of a faith or belief. And then on my side, there was two Eastern Orthodox Christian. And so, we have to basically go up. And I remember it worked out that I was going to be speaking first.
Oh. Oh.
I know. So already this super tough topic. Zara's tired. It's gorgeous. It's Cambridge. It's a 100-year-old debate chamber. It all looks amazing. Deep breath.
What privilege! What a privilege, though.
Privilege.
To
That's what
speak.
I'm saying. But what a privilege. And I'm just gonna tell you what I started with because I really thought through and I prayed hard on it. And I thought, I thought if I start with the usual stuff that I normally start with, people are gonna switch off because these are very intelligent people, right? So if I go textual or scripture, it's not gonna really work. So I need to
Right.
about the heart. I need to think about what's important to me. So here's how I started. So I stood up there in front of everybody. And I didn't bring any notes or anything. I had my little phone with a couple of bullets. I was hoping for the best. I know. Did my
Oh.
dua. And then I said, so have you counted it yet? How many times your eyes blinked as you look? Have you considered it yet? The small muscles that you use to smile or maybe frown in this moment? Have you considered the breathing that you're making right now? Your lungs grasp air and the steps that you took to get here? And can you feel it now? Your heart beating as you sit here listening to me speak. Now, if this isn't a loving God, then how do we explain all these loving miracles that he gives us? How can he be but anything but loving? And I got them for a moment just to stop and think about. You can't even tell me how your eye blinks or how your heart beats. You can't explain that to me. You can
Well,
tell me the science of it,
mm,
but can you tell me the miracle? Can you think about how much ease, just that smile, because we are taught in our faith, just think of that little thing that you can't even give thanks. You wouldn't be able to give thanks for the breath that you take every day.
yes.
Never mind your conscious ability to even question God's love or existence, that you even have that faculty. And then it went on and on. And if anybody wants to watch it, they put a little clip. We've got it on our YouTube and social media, so you can watch it. But at
Okay.
the end of it, I kind of just summated, and I went through different examples because for certain groups, it's like, well, why would God create punishment and test? Why is there so much suffering and all the rest of it? And we have our approach, which is that this is a test and this is, us all part of that. And I said, God's love is not conditional. It's not transactional. It's not dependent. It
Mm,
is a divine love, right? You and our love is temporal. You might like me today and hate me tomorrow.
yeah.
Our love changes. We are, always, and think about that divine love, that mercy, because in Islam, it's not just love, it's mercy. And
Yes.
what I found was so interesting. So I summated it and I talked about light and love and all the blessings that we have and the very fact that we can wake up every day and so much love and that nurturing feeling, that peace in our heart. And that's how I ended it. And I thought to myself how blessed we are that we can talk about God because he's told us about him and his attributes. And for me, that was probably, it wasn't the toughest thing I've ever done. I mean, I can talk about my other interviews, but it was the most meaningful because I was
Yes.
talking about something that wasn't political. It wasn't about, this and that. And,
Yeah.
it was a very pure thing. And it actually forced me to even think about the topic in a way that I hadn't thought about. You would just take it for granted. So it was after that, I was just really kind of like, whoa, did I just do that?
Yeah,
So
as on this podcast and what I do, I help women to amplify their voice and use podcasting to share their message, in which you do so well. So, what kind of tips could you share with an audience that that you're going to speak at, and how do you prepare that? What's your creative process?
think what's really important first is to know your audience and know who you're going to talk to. The question is, what am I trying to communicate? What do I want them to take from this? And so with the Cambridge Union debate, it was okay, who am I talking to, and why is this topic important for them to understand or to gauge, or how far am I going to get? The second thing is really important is about your own style. Sometimes we try and do other people's style and it just doesn't work because you can't
Yes.
copy, people give you lots of tips and tricks, but the more like for some people, notes in a script is really important. So if you're nervous, do it. Go and practice in front of that mirror and pause. Learn the power of the pause. When
Yeah.
we pause, it becomes frightening. Silence is terrifying often in interviews and things. So if I just stop right now, could feel like this is kind of like,
Yeah.
oh my God, what's going on? So I think learning your style is really important for
Mm,
notes prep, and the best prep is just thinking through mentally, like where am I taking them? Where am I going on this journey of conversation?
yes.
That I want to take my audience to. And then I think practice, you don't need to be amazing just on the day. Like, yeah, we don't need
Yeah.
to leave it to chance. We could practice and be better and better. So what works to my advantage is though I don't have time to practice too much. I have lots of experience in the week because
Yes. You could have learned on the job, really, haven't you?
literally, I mean, the week I got elected, I was averaging 9 interviews a day. I had my very big women's hour interview, and there was some real like heavyweight interviews, and I didn't get time to practice,
You're in
but
the deep end, really, weren't you?
got baptism of fire. It was 100% that. So what I realized though was that pressure suits me, and I just
Yeah.
do well in it.
Yeah.
But there are other times where actually I want a bit more time to, if you have the luxury of time, like use it. And if you can practice, practice. And then obviously the most important thing, obviously if you're a person of faith or belief, if you're Muslim, is pray, do your du'as before you start, make that little intention and ask. I always say, like, let this be meaningful, let this be something of benefit to myself and to my audience. Because why
Yeah.
not? Why can't it also be a form of worship or some sadaqah? So
Absolutely. It's surprising you said that. When I started my podcast, I was in Dubai. my friend listened to my first episode and she goes, you know what you're doing is sadhka jariya. And it's the same when you use your voice to help others be as great as they should be, the most challenging time that you've gone through, and how did you overcome that then?
So I can give you kind of two insights into that. I think I think starting is always really hard, and being a first continues to be hard even to today. So I was the first female, I was the youngest, I was so many firsts, right? And in one hand, it's like, oh, great, amazing. But on the other hand, being a female leader and being a young leader was terribly difficult. And I had people saying, well, I've been doing this for 35 years. What do you know? Right. And I had challenge from men and women, but I also had an amazing amount of support from men and women and young people, and lots, so lots and lots of outpouring and support. And I remember my first biggest battle was being confident in my own self.
That's
Believing that I was this leader was so hard. I was like, am I actually the Secretary General? I remember one time someone came to visit us at the offices, our office in London, and I
yes.
was in the office, and he came in and he said, I'm looking to meet the Secretary General. Is she here?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, yeah, yeah, is she here? And I said, yeah, it's me. And he goes, but you're so young. And,
Yeah.
he was so shocked. It wasn't coming from like a negative place. It was just genuinely, I look really young. And I remember having these like emergency meetings, those kind of crisis comms meetings, and I'm the head of the meeting. And I've got all these really very prominent people from the community, and I'm heading the meeting. And you got to kind of like, you can't lose your nerve,
Yeah.
buckle under pressure, and you've got to be really, it's not about assertive, but kind of quietly confident that you can do it. So I think I've always struggled with that. I call it the imposter syndrome. Because I was the first, there's no reference point. There's no, you can lean on people for support, but who really understands? I mean, let's talk frankly as women. Who understands what we as women go through? And we're both Pakistani, so that's there's different dimensions, right? And so
Absolutely.
it might be that I've been doing this day of Zoom meetings. Who's gonna do my laundry and the cooking, right? I'm sorry, but that is a legitimate concern. How am I gonna find time to brush my hair and moisturize, And there's just basic things that I mean, I'm much better now. But I really struggled to just cope with because it was so new and there's no blueprint or booklet or training pack or kind of
Yeah.
how did you do that? And then it's very competitive. There's jealousy. There's lots of negatives that come
Mm.
in this space. Being a female, people are looking at what I'm wearing. They're looking at what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
being women, you're under so much more scrutiny. And it's not people that are anti-women. It's just we have these inherent impressions of men and women in leadership. It's across society. It's not just about us. They're a little bit more in certain cultural contexts, but people just have different expectations. So for me, they really are looking at, right, okay, what are you going to, it's like all these additional things that maybe my predecessors didn't have, or there's like other layers of expectation, even from the external press. When people have a puppet, I'm a token, she's not really in charge, just the men behind her, or internally, you're so young, you don't really have experience. Are you sure you know? So you're getting it from all sides, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
So I think what I did to help me with that was really kind of well-being was really important. So I'd take a walk in the morning, I'd take breaks, I've got more eating.
Yes.
Parents are so lovely. My mom would drop me food off, and so then I'm just like, you know what? No, I'm gonna switch off now. It is time for switch off, and if you need me, so I think bringing boundaries and rules in, and even now, I mean, I've just been re-elected for second term, and I think that
Mashallah.
challenge, mashallah, there's so much expectation. Like, what am I going to deliver? And
Yes.
so I think it's an ongoing thing. I think we're always in a journey of being
Right.
comfortable with who we are.
So what's the most important thing that you've learned about yourself then?
I think you have to like who you are, or at least be in the process of that. If you don't feel good about yourself, the rest is too much. And having a really conscious faith relationship where you take some time, so someone said to me, have some time to do good deeds that no one can see. Because when you're in a public facing role, everyone tells you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're so amazing, right? But you need time out where, so when I'm home, I dress like a hobo, no style guru, no style
To relax. Yeah, exactly.
my moms, you still do the dishes, just in case you're the president or whatever. You know what moms are like, you could be,
You got to stay humble. You got to stay humble.
the general here, my friend, you just doing Betty. So you know that I think maintaining that humility, remembering that there's always that greater power and force, taking time to take care of your health, things pass. You know, there'll be a time where I'm not Secretary General. I might not be this big, important person for the public eye. But if I feel good about myself, I feel valuable, I feel like I've still got some contribution, that's really important. And I think at times you can feel like everything's hanging on me. No, it's not. It might be in the moment, but there's a bigger force at play here. And you just could do your bit. And I think it took me a while to get to grasp. So I would say, and if you don't like yourself, you know, it's a hard ask. Maybe there's bits of you that, you know, I talk too much, or I'm just not confident, I'm not assertive. Why do I always let them speak to me like that? Or why am I so dominating? Or whatever it is, we're all on different sides of that coin. What I would say to you is that, you know, think about who you're around. Company does really determine a lot. Think about what you spend your time. Is it scrolling? Is it watching? What are you absorbing? And then think about the kind of person you want to be. And are you really taking any step towards that? Because often we don't like ourselves, but we've changed nothing. And for me, there were things around like, well, I need to take care of myself, but my routine was awful. So I thought, well, that's probably a good place to start. So I just made 1% changes, little incremental. Or you know what? As a leader, I want to listen more. So I'm gonna just shut up because I'm a chatty person. I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna find ways to engage everybody. And if you're someone, for example, I'm quite small and petite. You've met me, Marie. I'm pretty
Yes.
tiny, little tootsie thing, right? But all these big guys around me. And there was an event I went to, and this she was even smaller than me. She said to me, "I really struggle with my height." She goes, "I'm so small, and I feel small, and I feel like nobody." I said, "Look, women, I am small and I don't care. I
Yeah.
literally do. I will stand and be confident because I feel confident inside and I've got something to relay. I said that comes through building relationships. So stand tall, you know, inside. And but you know, it's hard to do. It comes through practice, but it comes
Yeah.
through other people giving me that anchoring and support as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So is who is in your network of support then? Who do you lean on besides Allah, of course, but who else do you lean on?
I think my family, mashallah, I must admit, is such an important part of my life. And just, I think you need to, I hope everybody has access to
Yes.
some form of a supporting family. And then I think my colleagues, and what's wonderful is, you know, whether they're near or far, there's people I meet like yourself who you
Yes.
just cross paths with and they have such a motivational. And you're like, you know, because what happens is you get bubbled up and then I'll kind of be working and firefighting and problem solving. And I'll meet somebody, maybe a women's group or even an uncle or whatever it is. They give me a little pep talk and I'm like, okay. I had a funny little episode. I went for Juma prayer last week,
Yeah.
and there was some cool looking hipster looking ladies. They were quite young, and I could tell they're not from Glasgow. Glasgow's got a certain look. They were not
Right.
from
Okay.
London. I knew it. They were very stylish. And we just got chatting, and they said, oh, I said, so you from London? They're like, yeah, we're just studying, whatever it was. And one of them said to me, so what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm part of the Muslim Council of Britain. Because remember, it's Glasgow, and so I'm a nobody when I'm here.
Right.
Oh, that's really good. I hear they got a new leader and she's doing a pretty good job. And then and this, that, and the other. I said, yeah, I think she's got a lot of energy. And I just kind of said, I didn't, you know, but it was like as if
You
Allah
you
had,
didn't reveal? No, of course not.
you know, because you know, I just wanted to, like, there's something quite nice about that moment of just.
Yeah.
But what I loved was like in some ways Allah had given me this little gift that maybe I needed that day just to perk me up a little bit, which is like you don't know who you're benefiting. You don't
Yeah.
know who's paying attention or what good you're doing.
Absolutely.
You don't
Absolutely.
know, you know, like they obviously didn't know, which was great. Because I
Yeah.
didn't, I wasn't about, like I said, there's sometimes it's good to switch off from that persona,
Oh, no, yeah.
but to know though that somebody cares. So don't give up.
Yes.
Don't give up on your hard days. And I'm sure yourself, Mariam, will have so many experiences of like you want to give up and you're tired and you're fed up and you want to beat somebody up, but actually it's worth just sticking it out a little bit longer. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important to remember. So important. So
yes.
recently we had South Asian Heritage Month. And what did you do to celebrate and what does it mean to you?
Well, obviously it's so important in terms of being from the South Asian community myself. So we weren't able to put on an event this year, just because it's the holidays and everybody's away. But I was, supporting, you could say, and sharing and celebrating with many people, many men and women who are doing so much great. But for me, in terms of what it means, I think, I reflect back. We did this campaign recently, Eid with Refugees, and we hosted Eid parties in mosques across the country. And the reason that we did it wasn't just to have a feel good or we're doing something for refugees, but it was to acknowledge that we've got a role to play for these new communities that are coming in, predominantly Muslims. But it made me really reflect that, I'm third generation Pakistani. I thought there was a time where our grandparents came to this country. They had little to no English, and society was not the most welcoming at that time. It was all about race and race relations, never mind religion. And I know that for some of them, it would have been so difficult. There was the peddlers, there was, they couldn't get jobs, never mind practicing the faith. And they still did it though. They would find houses and purchase properties, and, they just got themselves together. And I thought, what a privileged generation we are. And, we talk about, for example, Hamza Yusuf in Scotland, he was a kind of a product of that too, to think the first minister is South Asian even, as well as Muslim and Pakistani. And just think about that, that we've come so far as communities that have a history with Britain that wasn't the best. And not only have we done it so quickly, generationally, if you think about it, really, as our parents put everything into getting us educated, supporting us, uplifting. And I think our community is still changing. South Asian community, we're still changing. But we really do have a lot to be proud of because of that first generation. So when I did that speech to refugees, I said, you're most welcome, because we know, like, now we all speak great English, but there was a time where, I even remember as a young kid, it's wearing chappals going down the stairs to the shops and being looked at by the white kids like, what are you doing? No socks on and these giants, my dad's slippers on, because in our house that's just fine. Or people looking at us because dad's bringing the biggest bag of potatoes, the big.
Yeah.
And they're like, how many people are you cooking for in that house? We do bulk buy, and we've got our quirks. We feed everybody, we feed the neighbor.
Exactly.
Going, and food is so important, and the communities, we do weddings crazy. We've got our quirks, the best of it and the worst of it. But really, I think we have so much to be proud of. And it's not to say, oh, because we're South Asian, but it's to say that because we've got generations of pioneers that put everything into making sure that we had a better chance. So I think that, whatever, I always feel proud of that Pakistani identity of mine. And not that I'm a great Pakistani in language or, got many, but in that sense that I know what my grandparents went through and what my parents went through. And I know even to this day, we still get that racism. And all of us in all of our different colors and cultures, it's still difficult being different, but we didn't let it stop us. And that's a powerful thing. So my congratulations, I guess, to everybody on that.
Absolutely. My father's first generation. I'm second. And, how he came over on a boat through Venice pre-partition. It's a big move, served in the Second World War and amazing history, and been taught so much by my father. And it's part of us, it's part of history. We're a byproduct of two different countries, cultures, and if we embrace them, it's a very powerful aspect of our personality.
Absolutely. And I think it's an important story for us to keep shaping. It's not over yet. And I think with the new youngsters, like my younger sister and all the rest of it, who are even further away from maybe their cultural identity, it's still really important as they go into that workforce, whatever they decide to do, to remember that story, and that we're always changing and being part of that story. Obviously we're Muslim, so our cultural mix can, sometimes is irrelevant in that wider global ummah that we're part of, but it's also important in that context of colonial history and what, because we've really, like, we've shifted the thinking on what it does mean. And I think being a British Pakistani
Yes.
even more different, or so I think as we go, I think we're also changing and shaping those cultures and customs with us. And
Yes.
younger generation are really different in how they perceive their own identity in that.
I feel third, fourth generation embrace their culture with a new modern look. Even taking our clothing, for instance, it's such an instantly we're recognized by our clothing, and we can connect with our culture, and that's what I love. But they've given it another modern twist, and people wear it as they want, how they want, and it's a beautiful way of still recognizing your identity through clothing.
It's such a confidence, isn't there, that wasn't there before, which is like, yeah, I'm ready
Absolutely.
for,
Yes.
I'm rocking it. And I
Yes.
think an appreciation from wider society that wasn't there before too, which is like, wow, that's really beautiful. That's really nice. That kind of, and if you look at food in the food industry, that's
Yeah.
huge. Uh,
Food, and even like both industries, where I think when the first generation, they came over where they wanted to blend in, and they didn't want to upset anybody. They just wanted to make their mark and do what they want to do quietly, but not make any moves, not say anything, because they didn't know. And again, it's a confidence thing, right?
I
So
remember that we just kept our head down and just,
yeah, and more of blending in and just being accepted, whereas now accept us for the difference, accept us for our unique personalities, for our heritage, for our culture, for our food, for our
I,
clothing.
I think so. And then I think, in terms of obviously young Asian women, because
Yeah,
my younger sister was 18, and I think so different as well in that confidence. They can be, business owners, startup entrepreneurs. They
absolutely.
I feel like it's so much broader now. A lot of them now are more financially independent,
Opportunities.
encouraged by parents. It's kind of like, well, marriage isn't actually everything. It's important, but why don't you be financially independent? I think there's this kind of appreciation
Yes.
that girls can do
Yeah.
more and be
I mean,
more.
I've worked in education. My background is teaching, and mentoring was such a big part of the work that I used to do and ran my own charity. So how can we encourage third, fourth generation women? Like you said, that 50% are below the age of 25. What can we do to encourage them to be more active in our communities and get involved? How would you encourage that?
I think that's it's really important because part of that is understanding the next generation and how they communicate. So social media is like a huge part of that.
Absolutely.
Digital presence and understanding that the mindset is really different. And I would say that it's challenging on lots of different fronts because younger generation a little bit more about the individual. I don't want to say selfish, but it's more about the individual.
Yeah.
And so kind of like they have this almost online digital persona.
Mm.
And it's kind of also this instant need to be there quick and to be there now. There's a lot less of that hard work and graft. I'm not saying that of everyone, but as in like, I want to get there now. I want to be that person. And I think what's really important though, so there's that side of it, but there's also still lots of the community from my travels which struggle with confidence and barriers. And there are still cultural barriers or just not knowing your family's done it or you're not sure. So I think what you're talking about mentoring is so important. Having different people you can go to. I think if you're someone who's doing great work, then reach out and show those young girls in that area that okay, this is possible. Visibility. So people like you and I who are in different spaces. So that's why I do a lot of school visits and I do TV, whatever kind of visibility. That's the reason I did so many of those events. And even that Vogue feature, for example, was to let girls know that there's lots of options. You don't have to be just good at university. A lot of people are not academically driven, but I'm a big
Pressure.
advocate for education, but we put so much pressure that that's it. Some people want to get hands on and they've done great in terms of, like you said, fashion or other kinds of industries. But I think there's a growing space and there's a growing kind of wave of people who want to do things, but they don't know how. We need that mentorship, we need that digital presence, and we need part of my role, community institutions to be welcoming, engaging, and really able to give those different angles. So it could be like a mosque, but housing, the careers fair or offering tutoring or mentoring or how we do community needs to be different. And remember,
Yes.
while some of us might be very privileged, there's a lot of people still really struggling and cost of living crisis, breakdown in families. There are lots of social issues that we still continue to suffer from.
Yes.
That's important to remember that, I went to some schools in the north of England and, the girls were like, they've done great on their schooling and their grades, but maybe university isn't an option because of the interest-based loan, or parents just don't think that's what they
Financially, it's a huge burden, isn't it? How can parents pay if you're, not so financially?
lots of barriers, and others it's that they've got carer needs.
Yeah.
Parents aren't working, they need to work, or no one's ever done that in before in their family. So parents are worried that if you go do so, some of that still is there. And it's very much about us showing people it's okay. And
Mhm.
if you do it, there'll be support. And I went to some places that, Bradford, for example, and other cities. And I was just amazed. I mean, I met with the university there, and they were just like, our Muslim girls are just doing amazing. They were also nervous. None of them wanted to go for it, but some of them are getting the top scholarships to do these jobs and apprenticeships. And they said they were so nervous. They just thought, oh, we could never do that. And then they shoved them, rightfully so. And they just turned out to be getting top recruitment jobs, mentorship opportunities, scholarships, bursaries. So it's kind of a bit of an unknown sometimes in places where people have never done it, but you just never know until you try.
Absolutely. Trying is the most important because, failures is part of the journey. You just get yourself, it's a reference point. Okay, this didn't work, try some other method. And like you said, education is not for everyone. You can go through some kind of work experience or training based, but
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that that is the only option. There's so many options available. There's so much awareness now.
Mhm.
That's not the only option. So how can we support you, Zara? Like as someone who's doing so amazingly and want to support you, how do we as Muslim women support you with your journey?
Oh, so exciting. Well, first of all, thank you, because you have been an amazing support. Just your very smile is so uplifting. And I think for me, what's really important is having a network of support. And I'm always so grateful that the women I meet are always happy to do that for me. I am a kind of this woman in charge, and one of my challenges is figuring out how to get stuff done, and part of that is in terms of who can I go to and lean in to help me with this event, or I need to get to this place and that. So if there's things that people want to help me in terms of logistics and events and management support, sometimes it's resourcing and finance. And I'll be very clear, like, it's difficult when you're trying to do work and you're having to constantly ask lots of different sponsors, like, can you help, can you help? So if you really want to help, commit to a £10 a month direct debit at the MCB. um,
Okay.
you know what I mean? But often it's, and it's your duas and your support, and even just sharing what I'm doing would be such a massive thing for me, because people are just like, we don't know and we're not sure what is the visibility. And I think, there's, like, when I think about it, a lot of people complain about community this and community that, and I've had some very difficult conversations around that. And I said, but at the end of the day, like, we're doing something and we're doing our best. And unless you're going to get up and do something, then why complain, right? Unless you're going to actually
Yes.
put yourself, I always say to people, like, do a day in my job, and see how you feel. And so I think being part of my network would be
Okay.
wonderful, sharing and joining, signing up, all that kind of stuff. And then at a local level, this isn't directly to benefit of to me or the MCV, but at a local level, really looking at where you can offer your skills, because the best thing you can do is to support locally. It makes such a big difference. Whether that is, you know what, I'm going to mentor one person, or whether that's about, I'm going to support a school project, whatever it is. I don't know,
Yes.
everybody's good at different things, but we need more advocates out there. We need to show what women are doing, what they're capable of. We also need some fun and excitement. And I think there seems to be a lack of innovation. Like, I'm really
Yeah.
hoping, if I have enough time and space, I want to do a women's leadership conference next year. I want to have a tea party.
Sounds fantastic.
Organize an afternoon tea. Everybody's invited.
Oh, let me help you with that one.
We should be facilitating networking and sharing. I mean, I'm not going to change the world. I think everyone's going to do it, but let me facilitate some of it. And I've met so many amazing women leaders, and you don't want do you want to do more generic events for the sake of events. You want to really bring people together, uh,
Yes.
that so that they can collaborate and do more good together. It's not a show and tell. I'm amazing. You are, but it's a show and tell. How can we be amazing? And I always think that we need more of a culture of lifting each other up.
More community based in local and our own areas, then maybe look at places where we can offer our services. And I think mentoring is such a poignant part of giving to a young person who needs direction. Mentoring is so much about direction, just offering your experience and just giving that person just that confidence to say, you know what, I've been there or I've done that, and don't worry about it.
I understand that sometimes helping locally can be a bit challenging, but now you've got digital and you've got that online space. You
Yes.
share and find ways to help people in so many different ways. Just wanted to add that little point. But you're so right. You know, the idea of someone believing in you is so profound. And
Yes.
you actually won't believe how much people don't believe in themselves in this day and age because we're constantly subjected to so much on a feed that we're constantly thinking, God, how can I be like them? How can I do what they're doing? How can I, you're constantly in this.
Comparison. Yeah.
And my mother always said to me, be your own measure of success, be your own benchmark of success, which was basically telling me, don't stop comparing yourself. We kill ourselves by doing that. We eat our own confidence. And the other thing we do is like, showboating our success in the sense that we're rivaling. Oh, well, I did this, and oh, I did that, or whatever. And that's not an environment you want to be in. You want to get out of that. You want to remind yourself that there's someone said there's plenty of space in Jannah for everyone. There's plenty of space
Ah,
for everyone. There is. What we think
what a beautiful way of saying that. Yeah.
enough. There is enough resource, enough aid.
Absolutely.
There is enough. But we've been taught that because it's all exceptionalism, I always say to people, I don't want to be exceptional in the sense that other women can't come after me. She was an exceptional case. We exceptionalize a lot of South Asian, we exceptionalize, or she was really good. She was just, no.
Yes. Yeah,
They're
that's right.
talented. They just don't have the confidence because
Yeah.
no one believed in them and told them that they could. That's
Exactly. It's just that's it. Just telling somebody you can do it. That's all they need.
exactly.
Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years then, Zara? What are your future plans?
There's no
Um,
5 plan. I'm going to survive these 2 years, thrive, not just survive. I don't know. I mean, everybody's asking me, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know. It's really difficult when you do something like this at such a young age, and then you're like, we got to get bigger, we got to get more challenging. I'm gonna get bored, but I also love to rest. I would also like to be a normal human being for at least a small period of time,
yeah.
travel a little bit. Yeah, it's still open. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that I want to continue serving and being of service. That's really important. I think in the course of this journey, I think I'll definitely miss the level of engagement that I'm having with everybody.
Yeah.
Socialite, being a big socialite that I am. So I'm gonna have to figure out ways to keep socializing. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever be done, will I, Mariam?
No, I don't think so.
But
My father was used to say, better you have to move with the times, otherwise you'll get left behind. And I've had that, imprinted on my heart, thinking, okay, you have to, everyone has to evolve and have to move with the times. And I think that's the same with the work that you're doing. You're taking it to you're changing it, but not changing it from the core values. We're just changing and adapting to this new generation or generations thinking.
yeah, I think that's completely it. You're kind of, I mean, one of the most important things that I think about is the future
Yes.
and where are we going, what are we heading towards? Because, we've got, as you said, that generational journey continuing, society
Mm.
is changing. But our whole vision and purpose kind of continues, isn't it?
Yeah.
Got to find ways. It's not just about relevance in that we're going to be relevant, but it's how do we keep making an impact? And I think that's kind of what I'm on the journey in terms of trying to continue to do.
Inshallah.
And inshallah, yeah.
Any last words for our audience that you'd like to leave them with? And yeah, anything else?
I just want to say, well, firstly, thank you to you for this amazing opportunity to share. And what I would say is that, my story in some ways is quite different and quite interesting. But I hope the lesson is something that applies to everybody, which is that I never really knew what I would become a leader, never mind a secretary general, never mind a public figure, never mind any of these things that I am, be on this lovely podcast as well, or Cambridge or Ian Dale LBC or vote, all these different things that I get to do. That is all from God. That's all from above. That's what I was always destined to be. But I took steps out of my comfort zone and I was pulled sometimes by people and friends and cheerleaders. And what I would say is that try and find that when we talk about liking yourself, try and find that authentic self of who you are. You're not going to find it in the first go. Step out of your comfort zone, talk to different people, get away from the crowd, and start to find yourself on a journey of discovery. And when you do that, think about And you know, some people say, well, how did you deal with your imposter syndrome? I got over myself and I focused on the purpose. So get over
Yes. Actually
yourself,
getting that,
get
absolutely.
over yourself and focus on the good that you can make, because you've been given gifts that you need to share. People say it's a gift, you should share it with the world. And that, you know, like there's just small ways you can do good. You don't need to be a big secretary general or have a podcast, whatever it is. There's all the little ways that you can be good. There's that little conversation you have with your neighbor and friend. It's that little sadaqah you give that nobody knows about. It's you being great at work and being a great person that people like to be around, and you challenging toxic energy. Those are really important things. And finally, I would say, don't forget gratitude.
Yes.
Gratitude has to be an ongoing part of our life, our morning, our afternoon, our evening. It's the people in our lives, it's all ultimately our creator, it's our faith. But having a gratitude mindset is what really helps you get through your ups and downs and makes you realize that there is so much more to be thankful for than there isn't, even when it feels like it's difficult. So thank you so much, and I hope everybody enjoyed listening.
Thank you so much, Mashallah. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and you know, wishing you all the success for the future. We're right behind you. We're here to support you, and anything that you need from us, just let us know. All the best for the future, inshallah.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.